Right, and we're back, and it's COMP123. It's week 2, lesson 2, part 2. And we just came out from talking about the difference between ref and out. And we're skipping along this little presentation that we're doing, and we're just using it as a backdrop. I don't want you guys to focus too much on it. Again, just a recap, I wouldn't use ref anytime we're doing any object-oriented programming. It's bad practice. Out, maybe. And that's a big M for maybe. I don't think I would either. I would probably just use classes. That's just me. But it's there for us to use as another option. And it even says it here. Look, it says, the disadvantage of using reference and output parameters, they allow multiple methods to have access to the same data, which weakens the whole black box paradigm, right? And really, when you think about object-oriented programming, and we look at an object as a car, right? When I'm driving a car, I don't need to know how the engine works. I just need to know I need to press the pedal and it's going to go, right? If I turn the wheel, it's going to turn. If I press the brake, it's going to stop. I don't know how it's happening. I don't know if there's brake fluid and there's like, what kind of spring there is in the accelerator to, to give me tension. I don't know any of that stuff. I don't care to know. All I care is that it goes and it stops and that it turns on when I turn it on. And that's what most people care about, right? But once I do this, once I give access to the inner workings, my memory locations, it's like saying, you know what? I just can't only turn the key on, but I can press like the carburetor, right? I can touch the carburetor with my hand, right? When I'm doing this whole reference thing. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's dangerous. Just like it would probably burn your hand, you're going to get burnt by doing it. So please don't, is what I'm asking. We want to keep the black box a black box. We don't know how it works. And you don't want your clients to know how it works either. When you create your methods and it's you start programming your way internally, you want to hide the stuff that you need to hide. It only show or expose methods and properties that you want or need to expose. It's cleaner from a deployment perspective. Okay. So before, way back in the day, we used different methods to convert. For example, back in chapter 2, we had ways of converting or casting, if you will, what type of data type to another. Like, for example, if I wanted to convert to int32 from an int, I could use the convert and then the method to int32. So I'm using the convert class to do that. I can also use, which is very much more common, the parse method of the int data type, because in C#, even though int is a data type, it's also an object. And every object has methods and properties, right? So int being a data type, we can use the parse method to change the output, as an example, into an integer. So when we assign it, here we're assigning what we're getting from the console into the score. We want to make sure it's an integer, so we're validating this data by converting it. Now there's an issue here, because we have no other kind of validation. If I put it like some kind of character, it's going to mess it up. We're going to get some really messed up input, right? And as we move forward, and as you go into the next course, which would be Programming 3, you'll move outside of doing things with console and into doing things with the UI. And when you go there, you'll see that it's easier for us to do data validation across a UI compared to a console. Because in a console, you can enter whatever you want. In some cases, you can do the same thing with an input text box in a UI, UI being a user interface. But data validation has to occur either way. It's just a little easier with a UI. Okay, Tryparse is the new thing that we're trying to learn in this chapter. Tryparse takes two parameters, right? The value and an out parameter to hold the result. And this is kind of weird, right? So remember what an out parameter is. It's an alias. It's an alias to a memory location that hasn't been defined, which is kind of what we're doing. We're kind of saying with strength, we're saying take strength and throw it into this set ability, and when it comes back into the control flow of the main program, it's going to be set. That's all we're saying, right? Here, what we're saying is try to convert this value into the value we want. let's take a look. And of course, Tryparse returns a Boolean value, so there is a return value for the method. So let's take a look at an example of Tryparse and why I would want to use such a thing anyway. Are you going to ask me, do I need to use this one, Tom? Can I just forget about this whole thing? This whole chapter should be avoided, right? And the answer is no. Tryparse is not a bad thing to use. The challenge is you need to use an out type parameter. It requires an out type parameter, this method, right? Which, like I said, this is where the maybe comes into play, right? This is where my maybe would be. Maybe I might use an out parameter for this kind of thing. Because what I'm saying is the score is going to be my output. That is when it's what's going to take in the entry string. So I'm sending the score and my entry string as what's going to be converted. So I'm going to try and parse or convert the score or my entry string into an integer. That's what I'm doing. Okay. How do I show you this in an easy way without confusing the crap out of you, right? Let's go back to the strength idea. All right. So what I'm saying is I want to convert it. And if I was to read the console for the type of the ability score I want, right? So instead of setting the console like I'm doing up here, set ability, right? I don't want to do that. I want to read the console, right? That's the idea. So let's get rid of set ability for now. And instead of killing it completely, I'm just not going to use it. So I'm just going to comment it out. So we don't have an ability, right? And once we've done that, if we don't have an ability, strength has an issue, has an error, right? The Hulk doesn't have any more strength because there's nothing that's been defined for him, right? If his name is truly the Hulk. Hey, why not? You know what? I can't say this anymore. Mets. There we go. Now I feel better, right? Not too intelligent, not too fast, but really strong. Okay, so the Hulk, he's got no strength, right? And the only way I can get the strength right now is either to set an ability for him or to get it from the console. So remember, we can do a console.read. And we're going to do a console.read line. If I do that, and remember when I do that, a console.read line, it returns a value, right? So if you notice here in the code hinting, oh, you can't see it. Here in the code hinting, what it actually says is that, and you guys can't see it, it reads the next line of the characters from the standard input stream, right? So I'm reading the standard input stream, I'm reading it in, and it's got to go somewhere. I just can't read it, right? So just like it says here in our example, entry string has to be of type string, right? Because string is the entry string. But I want to convert entry string into an actual ability, right? Or an integer in this case, right? So let's put that in there. Let's make this, we'll call it string entry ability, right? One that we get from the ability, or we'll call it, sorry. I'm making you guys change it now. Console ability, there we go, console ability. We're getting it from the console, right? Is of type string, right? And what we're going to say is, well, console ability, right? Ability is equal to console.readline. So we're going to get the ability from the console, right? The ability value, if you will, right? And what I want to do is I want to say int dot, and there's different options. I can go parse like I used to do, right? Here's my code hinting. It says I can do a parse, right? I can do a tryparse. And if I do a tryparse, right, it won't give me an error until I put the wrong things in. Now there's two signatures, like we talked about last week for the tryparse method. It says it returns a Boolean, right? Either it's true or false. And it requires a string and an out integer because I'm using an int.tryparse, right? So that's the signature. That's what it looks like. Now I can also look at another signature because it has a couple of signatures here. Signature 2 says a string, some kind of number styles. I can style it, right? A format provider, which is a format helper, and also an out. This is a much more complicated version when I want to do some string formatting with a different kind of signature, basically, that allows me to do some formatting. But I don't care about formatting. All I want to do is make the Hulk have 50 strength, right? So let's just do this. So the first thing is I got to put in console ability, right? Because that's what's converting. And then I got to use the keyword out, int, and then strength, because that's what's going to be receiving the ability. Actually, I don't need int, because I've already defined it as an int. Okay? And all this is saying is, this line 22, right? In line 22, it's saying console ability is being assigned the input that I'm getting from the console, because I'm using the console.readLine method to read the console. It's waiting for my input, right? And when I enter whatever I enter, it's going to take that, try and parse it, take my my string that I'm getting, and try and convert it into an integer. And then when it's converted, if it gets converted, if it's true, throw it into my strength. Different way of setting an attribute, right, in this particular case. Let's see how it works. Everything else remaining equal. Okay, so it's waiting for my input. I didn't say, hey, enter strength. That's kind of bad, right? So I'm going to put 50. There it is. So 50, and then strength in main before is 50, strength in increase ability 52, and then I do the same thing as normal, right? I think it's probably better, though, if before I do this, because I don't have any kind of descriptor, just from a user experience perspective, I probably should do a write line that says, enter your ability score. Right? That makes more sense. Let's try that again. And if I go start, and I pull this across, enter your ability score. Well, let's make it 500, because the strength, now the Hulk is raging, right? And when the Hulk rages, right, he has an adrenaline surge that makes him lift the whole building, right? So now he's got 502 after we increase ability, and we press space, it goes away. Okay, so that's what this Tryparse method is really giving us. It's giving us the ability to take input from the console and convert it to strength, convert it to an integer. Now this just works on integer, it works on the other ones too, but let's just check out the result. Okay, so we've conquered two of the three things I wanted to talk about today for sure. Out, a ref, and now we're going to go with a parameter array. We know what an array is. It's a series of memory locations that have a related data type. I'm saying it a different way. And they're numbered with an index, starting at 0. Right? They have 0-based numbering, because C# is a C-influenced language. Right? It came from old C, just like Italian came from Latin. Right? And well, Greek came from like space. I mean, aliens, right? So Latin would be like C, and C# would be like Spanish, right? And in this kind of comparison that we're doing, C, the old way we used to do it, had all arrays starting at 0, 0-based array or indexing. Okay, so again, it says it's a local array, right? Whatever the array we normally expect is, declared within the method header by using the keyword params. All right? And then what we use when you don't know how many arguments we're going to get, right? Which makes sense. So it allows flexibility for a method signature when we don't know how many arguments we're getting. This is great if you're building a game and you don't know if you're going to be hit by one or more missiles, right? You're waiting. Maybe and it could be different types of missiles that are hitting you, right? You might be hit by a photon torpedo. You might be hit by some kind of phaser weapon, 2 different kind of missile types, right? And you're listening for anything that's hitting you to see if you collide with those missiles, right? Well, in this particular example that I'm kind of making up here, just to annoy people. We don't know how many parameters we're getting. We don't know if it's one or many. And this is a good place to use something like a parameter array, where we're listening for any number of parameters that are incoming. We have to be able to respond to them, however. You'll see, otherwise it becomes useless to use something like this. Okay. When we use the params keyword, you can't use any other parameter after. So this is a good thing to use alongside other named parameters. An example of that would be if we know x and y coordinates, but we may or may not get a z coordinate, right? And so we just say params. We could get z. Maybe there's going to be some other thing in the fourth dimension, time, right? Some other kind of weird thing too, right? So we're just listening to more and more parameters. But anything after the parameters keyword or params keyword, you can't. It'll cause you to get us to have a syntax error. And again, only one params keyword per method declaration. Let's take a look at an example. Okay. So again, we have a string array. That's what this square brackets things means, right? Square bracket array, string array of names, right? That's what the identifier or property variable name is for the array. And we were declaring the names here in literal declaration method, right? So this is the way we're doing. We're saying it's a list. So here's Mark separated by commas, Paulette. That's the second element of the array. So this is the 0th element. This is the first element. This is the second and the third and so on, right? Separated by commas. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 elements in this names array, okay? And then it says display strings. We're sending Ginger, George, Maria, and Thomas, right? And what we're saying is we're also sending in names as well, second time. So what is this doing? What does display strings do? Well, it's using the params keyword to accept a string array of people. We just don't know how many. It could be 1, like Ginger, 4, in terms of this whole string, so all of the names, right? Or 3. And all it's doing is for each string, for each person or element, for each element in the people array, iterate. Keep doing a console.write and add in the person's name separated by a space. That's what this is doing. And this is how I want you to be able to parse the information, right? So when you look at a piece of code, you should know the output before we come to it, right? Look through the code and say, this is what I should be expecting. I should be expecting when this loops through, this is a for each loop, for each of the elements, persons, in the people array, right? Loop, iterate. That's what this thing is saying. There's one thing I really don't like though about this formation. What would it be if you're a best practice kind of person like me? Something I really hate. It bugs me. It's like kryptonite to the Superman, right? What is it? Huh? Braces. I don't like this. I don't care if it's indented. It's ugly. It's wrong. There should be braces here for my code block. This for each loop, you know, it should be braces. This shouldn't be allowed. And in future iterations of C#, I'm telling you, it won't be, right? Because ECMAScript 6 is coming, and they won't allow this kind of stuff to happen in most modern languages. Why? It's convenient. But this is the same problem we have with the if statements. If I have if and nothing underneath it like this, it'll work in that conditional statement. But if I add, like I said last week, if I tack stuff on, right, by accident, it's the easiest way for me to have some kind of logic error. And again, what are the two types of errors? Most common? Syntax errors and logic errors. And logic errors are the more difficult ones to fix because they don't have a red squiggly, right? Syntax errors do, though. So that's why I don't like it. Okay, let's emulate this thing. So what I'm saying is I have a number of different parameters I'm taking in with a params array, parameter array, right, and the people. But this for each loop, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat if I can, and I cannot cheat. I'm going to have to do this manually again. So maybe what I want to do is I want to create an array of ability scores, right? So let's declare this. So it's going to be a string array, right? And I'm going to call this ability names, and that it's going to be equal to strength, right? Just like we did before, stamina. And by the way, there are other easier ways to do what I'm doing, but we're walking, we're not running or flying yet. And you know what I'm going to do just to make it simple, because you guys can't see all the way over here. I'm going to go to Tools, Options, C#, and I'm going to put word wrap on. So that it wraps it over here. Okay? So I've created this array, ability names, right? Now I want to pass the array, right? If I want to pass this array somewhere, and if I want to just pass strength, this first option, what accessor method can I use to do this? How do I specify just the 0th location that I want to pass in there? Like down here, where I increase my ability, but I specified strength. I don't want to specify it down here. I want to put it in an array. How do I do that? How do I make this the array? I want to get the string literal from the array as opposed to me typing it in. How do I access that member in the array? Square brackets? Square brackets with a what? 0, right? So I'm going to go ability name, right? 0. If I've done it correctly, it should be able to work, right? Did I call it ability name or ability names? Ability names. Oh yeah. Ability name 0. And then if I run it again, because I'm just accessing right now, I haven't made any changes. It says enter your ability score, it's 500, and then my strength, it accepted my strength as the name that I put in, is 502. Right? So I've declared this array, right? And if I want to print out, I want to create, maybe I want to say, I'm going to create another useless method called show ability names. And I'm going to pass in, right now, just ability names 1, right? That's all I'm passing in. I don't have a show ability names method, so we need to define such a thing. Don't worry, I'll update my GitHub in a second for those people who can't follow along. Right? So I'm going to go private static void, right? Ability, so show ability names, and I'm going to use the params array, right? Params array, and it's going to be of type string, just to be equal, right? String array of abilities, right? And if you notice here in our example, back in our example, it says I'm looping for each string person in people, right? So for me to do the same thing, I'm going to use a for each, right? For each string ability in abilities, right? Here's my code block because it's ugly. I don't like it when it's not done that way. What am I going to do? I'm going to do a console.writeLine. So it's going to go down instead of across, like the original example, right? And what am I writing? I'm writing my ability, right? So I'm writing my ability. The name of my ability is going to be written down because I'm reading my ability, right? So this is before if you notice, this happens right at the top. It's before we actually listen for a score, an entry score. Right? So I'm looking for ability 1, and it's going to come back, right? Because control is going to flow into here and come back, right? Into here and come back. So it's going to start from here, my show ability names. It's going to do that first. All the abilities are going to show, and then it's going to do the other thing that we did before. Let's see if that works. All right, stamina, right? And I put 500. Now, it's not 500 stamina, it's 500 strength, right? And the reason for that is because here I put ability names 1, right? I specified the second one, which is stamina. This is the 0th, this is the 1st, this is the 2nd, this is the 3rd, this is the 4th, right? Here I'm saying, with my square brackets, I say access the 1st, the 1th index, the 0th, the 1th, the 2nd, the 3rd, and so on, first, and then send that to show ability names, that method, which is down here. And this method, show ability names, right, displays ability names passed into the method. Right, just a short description. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So if I say, instead of ability names 1, I could also say ability names 1 and ability names 2. Or I could do that as well. So both of those ability names can be in there. 1 and 2. Right? First ability, or the second ability, and the third ability. Even though it says 1 and 2, we're really saying the second and the third. Because remember, we're using 0-based indexing. So now I'm going to have 2 abilities, stamina and speed. And then I'm going to ask for a score. Right? With my strength of 500. And by the way, I'm just putting 500 every time, but I can put any number I want. What happens though, and I'm going to test all this, I'm going to make it break. I'm going to break this thing in a second. It's a very simple program, right? I'm going to just use ability names itself. So I'm going to pass the whole array. Right? If I do that and I run it, then I'm going to have all the abilities: strength, stamina, speed, toughness, and intelligence. And instead of entering my ability score of 500, I'm going to enter my ability score as X. It's not an ability, but it converted into some kind of, it's trying to convert into a number, and it doesn't know the number, so it makes it a 0, and then it adds 2 to it. So this is where the validation comes into play and says, no. I shouldn't be allowed to enter in an X. I should be forced to enter in an integer, right? Or it should loop back. Okay. So again, all we've done is we've emulated, just with different words and different variables, the same idea that we've got over here. Clear as mud? So again, a parameter array, using the params keyword as a recap, all it does, it allows us to use variable number of parameters inside our method, and our method signature, right? And you can mix this, right? You can mix it up. You can say, here's some fixed number of methods plus a params array afterward, right? But you just can't do the params array first with a mixed number of methods afterwards. It has to be done the other way. And what I mean by that is, let's see if I have another example of this. Yeah, I'm not going to go to overloading yet. Maybe I'll leave that for next time, right? Because I think I'm going to go at a pace like this, just so you guys get everything, right? Because next time I'm going to do a little bit of more of a testing with you guys, right? So I want to make sure you got it. So what I mean by that is, my show ability names method, which is down here, right now all it takes is a string parameter array, right? But I can also take an integer before that. So for example, I can say, some kind of other integer or string. Like let's say, for example, I want to get a separator, string separator, separator separator. No, I was right. I was right the first time. Thank you. And my string separator is going to be the thing that I'm going to use in here in the console.write line. Right? So every time it goes through, I can enter whatever string separator I want. Right? So I'm using both a params array plus a string separator. So what that means is I got to add a string separator in here first. And the string separator is going to be ... Right? Make sense? So it's the separator. So what is it? What's my output going to be now? Here's my method. What's the expected output? Yes? Name and the dashes. The name and the dashes. The name and the dashes. Just like a song. Right? Let's try it out. Here it is. Right? Name and the dashes, name and the dashes, right? Because that's my separator. And if I change the separator string, because right now I have it as dashes, and I change it to something weird, like a weird pattern, maybe, I don't know if I can do this, but let's try it anyway, right? There it is, right? Almost like barbed wire. Come on, around the Hulk's muscles. Right? Then we're good. Right? Clear as mud? Are we good? It's that time. And it's been a nice time with you guys this week. And tomorrow we'll see each other again for more of this excruciatingly fun stuff with strength, intelligence, stamina, and speed. And the Hulk at your service. And see you tomorrow.